Welcome to Roll to Hit Gaming's 15 favorite games.
Today we're going to be focusing on our favorite card games.
The way we put these lists together is that we each sat down individually and made a list of more than our 5 favorite in this genre. Then we compared the list to make sure there wasn't crossover. So you're getting a 15 unique valued list of our favorite card games. For Roll to Hit Gaming, I'm Chip.
I'm Joe.
And I'm Lucas. Let's get to the list.
Hi, I'm Joey from Roll to Hit Gaming, and I'm here to tell you my favorite card game. It is Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a card game, and you're able to create your own cards, card deck, and so I have my own right here. It's Pendulum, and basically all you do is you get someone in your family and you play with them, and basically you're just this type of guy with cards, and you're supposedly, there's different effects with them. They have things, and Pendulum characters, they have these two things where you put them to the side. But with that, you can just use them for fun, like a normal card game that you can play with, and that it's just usually for fun and such like that.
So my number 5, to get us started here, I put on the list because of I feel its impact overall to the gaming industry and on card games in general, and that's Magic the Gathering. We all started playing this one in high school, and I bet we played this game thousands and thousands of times and lost a lot of sleep that we'll never get back over it. Occasionally still comes out, but not as much as it once did. But I think the impact on gaming as a whole and really keeping the industry afloat for a lot of gaming stores, Magic the Gathering has to have a spot on this list.
That's absolutely true. I started in high school as well, and just after a while, though, it became a little bit more complicated with the new. I think after bonding and shadowing is when I finally bowed out.
Yeah.
But that was a long time ago. But it was a great game, and it still is a great game, and people are enjoying it today.
Yeah, we cut out about around the time of Ice Age, I guess.
Yeah.
Once it finished up. When we put this list together, I had gone back into my favorite 100, and I had sort of purposefully left out some collectible card games. So, but yeah, Magic the Gathering is awesome. It's definitely one of my favorites as well.
All right, Joe?
Well, for my number 5, I chose a card game that was more of a filler game, but it's one that I really enjoy, and that's Biblios. Basically, you are trying to be the best. You're monks, basically, trying to be the best library. You're collecting manuscripts and books, and both religious texts and some that are questionable. And as you're gathering these tomes, you are also trying to change the value. At the end of the game, will this type of tome be worth more than another? So it's hand management, it's card drafting, to where I keep one, I give one, and then one goes into an auction pile. So there's a lot of things to keep up with, but it is a lot of fun. It's its own little mini puzzle, and that's Biblios.
I like the game because you modify those dice that are sort of telling everybody what each category is going to be scored. And so if you've been kind of keeping one section, you can sort of pattern that to start moving up. But then if you see one of your opponents start moving a dice up for them, you say, oh, I guess they got a lot of that, and you can kind of bring theirs down or whatever. It's a neat little game, and portable to boot. Yeah.
Yep.
Mine is y'all's favorite card game in the world, and that is Through the Ages, A Story of Civilization. And so these guys, man, it's a slog for them, but I like it. It's a civilization building game. and mostly all cards. There you have a tableau and some blocks to move around, but I think at its very core, the thing I find most interesting is the way that those the development cards come out onto the track, and then as the rounds go around, they're shifting down and becoming cheaper for the ones that aren't taken right off the bat. Mm-hmm. And I like that. Maybe assembly line, if you want to call it that, or something. That kind of movement of those cards. I really dig that. So that's my number 5, Through the Ages, and they love it. They just don't want to admit it.
Yeah, I have nothing to say.
This one's got a downtime problem that's my biggest deal. I've been noticing a lot of people lately on the forums and such talking about what a great 2-player game this is.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And that might actually solve some of my problem with it, because it's a great design. And it's a great game, but the downtime between turns is just a disqualifier for me. But I could see how some folks would really enjoy it if they don't have a problem with that downtime. So that is our number 5 favorite games, card games.
So for my number 4, I chose Blood Bowl Team Manager. This is one by Fantasy Flight Games. If you love the board game Blood Bowl, be it the earlier editions or the new one that just came out, if you want a fast, but it mirrors the board game well, and that is Blood Bowl Team Manager. Basically, you choose one of the mini teams, human, dwarf, Skaven, whichever, and you're working your way towards the tournament. And in between, you're hiring staff and you're cheating like crazy. And it's fun, it's entertaining, it's a quick game, and it's one that I really enjoy, and that's Blood Bowl Team Manager.
I've never played this one. I really want to. I kind of feel like I've played it in my head because I've played so much Blood Bowl, and I bought it, and then we had kind of a duplication in our collection, so I think I let mine go on a trade. But it looks real cool. It looks simple to play, and it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I really wouldn't have thought you could capture the feel of Blood Bowl in a card game, but this one pulls it off really well. Like she said, you've got the line of the bowl games out in front of you, and you're assigning your team members to each one, and they do special abilities. They incorporated, like she said, the cheating, everything that comes from Blood Bowl. Really great experience. Good little game.
Well, my number 4, all jokes aside on Through the Ages, this one I know is really a favorite of our group, and that's Elder Sign. I picked this one up, and this was our first introduction to the Cthulhu Mythos games. Brought it to the table, and everybody was pretty skeptical about it because I don't know. I think I may have been the only one that's even halfway interested in Lovecraft stuff. But we played it, and it whipped us, man. I mean, it whipped us bad, and almost like Pandemic, it sort of gave us a challenge, and we stayed up all night trying to play this thing and just win, And it's a really neat game of dice rolling and trying to match certain combinations of patterns to resolve mysteries, and then proceed throughout the game and try to win. But really neat. Elder Sign. What do you guys? I mean, you guys seem to enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah, I really do like Elder Sign. I think I've gotten all the expansions that come out with it. The only reason I didn't have it on my list is because when I think about this one, my brain says dice game.
Yeah, but there's so many cards.
There are, but yeah, and we'll probably have further. I'm sure I put things on my list that how's that a card game? But to me, the cards are just like locations, and they could have been accomplished with tiles or tokens or whatever.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a fantastic little game, one. And, I couldn't recommend Elder Sign more.
That's great. I love that game too.
All right. My number 4 is a Game of Thrones living card game 2.0. We've talked about this one before. It's from Fantasy Flight, and it's one of the, you get a lot of cards each month and add them into your decks and such. And you're struggling for power against your opponent. And, you do that by playing your agendas, doing your attacking, your intrigue, all of these things. It's incredibly thematic for a card game. And one of the things that card games, in my opinion, struggle with is the ability to have theme. But this one really plays out and gives you the same kind of feel you would get watching the show or reading the books. And in particular, the thing that I love the most about it is when you have a character die, which, as we all know, happens very frequently with a Game of Thrones, they're gone. So, you started the game with multiples of that character in your deck so that you'd get them to come up, but you can't play a future card of that character because that character is dead. And I just think that's really, really cool. It's unlike, like Magic, you put out your Shivan Dragon and he dies. Well, you got 3 more of them in your deck. It'll come back. Not in this one. And I really, really like that dynamic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. I especially like how you can put combinations together that make sense. When you think of House Stark, you can't really have House Stark without the wolves, and they really work together with the house itself. And then you add the crows from the wall, and they really work well up in the north. So I like the way it matches the story by being the cards really do interact with each other. So.
And it was much improved from the first edition. We played both of those. There were some little quirks about first edition that I was glad got modified in this second edition.
Yeah, I think it had some bloat that they were able to.
This game could easily become somebody's lifestyle game, as they call them.
Sure.
Because the production is at a steady enough pace that you're always getting new product. And man, there's just a lot of variation to try out with it.
Absolutely. And that's our 4th favorite card game.
Well, to begin, my number 3 favorite card game is going to be Seven Wonders Duel. This one just kind of took Seven Wonders off the shelf for me. I really like the 2-player aspect of it. I like that it plays faster and just kind of gets to the point. I think you don't like it so much, but it was because you didn't like Seven Wonders?
I'm really not a big Seven Wonders fan, but I will admit that the pyramid, the pyramid tableau that the 2-player plays off of makes it a lot more interesting than the original version.
Yeah, I like the refinements they did with it.
Yeah, I really liked Seven Wonders, and then, like he said, this one may have just replaced it. Really, I like the clip at which it works. I actually like and this is minor, I guess, but to me it's thematic. I like that you're going to complete 7 wonders in the 2-player game, and you're only going to do that in the multiplayer game if you're playing with 7 people, right? So, I don't know. I just thought that was really neat. The 2-player version in the original didn't work so well, and they nailed it with this version. So if you're looking for a 2-player version of kind of this empire building like 7 Wonders was, this is definitely going to be your game. Yep. My number 3 is an older game, and it kind of came about in the beginnings of the Magic the Gathering era. It was another one of those deck master games from Garfield. Published by Wizards of the Coast, and that's Vampire. It was called Jihad back then. Now it's called Vampire: The Eternal Struggle. It's based off of the White Wolf World of Darkness, with the vampires and all of that. And the cool thing about that always was the way the politics of the different clans worked, And I think this was really the first game, if you discount your mana pool or whatever, this was the first game I ever played where you managed a resource in your blood tokens, because you would have to move those from different cards, and those would essentially be like cash to some of the clans, and other clans they'd be used to activate abilities. The depth found in that card game, and it hasn't been produced in years and years and years. Somebody needs to grab that and re-put it back out. But the depth in this game is just unbelievable, and that's Vampire: The Eternal Struggle.
I'm so glad that made our list, because anyone who had the chance to play that game really should. The politics in it is just amazing. The fact that you're voting to become Prince of the City by the end of it, each round. You can have equipment, you can have blood dolls, you can have, and the different clans, they have their own personalities. Even the Renegades, which were the Caitiff? No, I can't remember. Yeah. But, you had all these different clans, and not all of them were political based. Some of them were manipulative. The other ones were brute force. So you could make your clan any way you wanted to try to wrestle control of the city.
And through those votes, it was an adversarial thing, but through those votes, it made you sort of work together at times, because you had to,
create alliances,
try to get what
successful.
You needed to have happen.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to go out on a limb here. So I think Jihad is the Euro game of collectible card games, where Magic is the Ameritrash version, right? And I love both of those games.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Magic it will always have a spot on my Hall of Fame there. But really, I mean, if I'm honest with myself, I think I like Jihad better. It would be situational. So if somebody asked me if you want to play Magic or you want to play Jihad, I'd really have to look at who my opponents are going to be.
Right.
And if I only have one other person to play with, I'll probably play Magic. But if I've got a group of people that know how to play Jihad and we have about 2 hours to play, we're playing Jihad. No questions asked. I'm not going to play 9 games of Magic with you. With 7 other people in 2 hours, I'll play 1 game of Jihad. It's so much fun, but it does. I think that's probably where its downfall came, was you had to be willing to invest some time to play it, and with Magic coming along and people really getting in that, you can play 15 games of Magic by the time you can play 1 game of Jihad with 4 or 5 other players, right? But now you remember. It was last year, or maybe a couple years ago. There was an April Fool's joke that got us.
I know.
Somebody had went all out to make this really high quality production image for the internet, saying Jihad was coming back, right? And man, we hook, line, and sinker. We were so excited. So anyway, if anybody from White Wolf is still out there listening, bring this game back. You'll have 3 people buy it. So yeah, great game.
So my number 3. Not as exciting, I guess, now that you've dropped down Vampire the Eternal Struggle. But my number 3 game is Coal Baron, the Great Card Game. It took the board game and just laid it all in cards right in front of you, and you're mining the coal, and then you're getting the coal to your trains, and you're building up your trains in order to fill contracts to get and to deliver them. And that seems like a lot to do, but it's in a card game and it flows so well, and there's a little bit of worker placement to see what you choose first over someone else, but just that system works so well, and so I chose Coal Baron, the Great Card Game.
For my number 2, I've got Upper Deck's Marvel Legendary. We've talked about this game a number of times, but I just love the way this one works. I don't hate on DC Deck Builder like a lot of people do, but it just does not compare to this system. The way and the expansions they have now, the combination of heroes and villains are just unlimited. Every time you go into it, it's a nice, tense, cooperative game. We throw that scoring victory points junk out the window and just play it as a full co-op, and it's a great time every time it hits our table. I think the art is great in the game, and I just I love the way it works in every situation. So
I like the fact that you can pick and choose the heroes that are involved in the game. You can also pick the mastermind and scenario. But if you want something that's completely, new, fresh, and you had no part in creating this whole thing, they have apps out there that can just, you hit the button and boom, here's your mastermind, here's this, here's your team, go. And I think that's amazing that you can just put the game down and just start playing and don't really have to think so much about it, even though there's so much content that keeps coming out for it.
Yeah, this is the one that I know was a crossover between us. I love Legendary, especially the Marvel version of it, for everything that y'all said.
Yep. All right.
Well, my number 2 is Lord of the Rings, the card game. If you know our group by now, you'll know that we are really into like the living card games where you buy the packets and it expands the story out. The one for Lord of the Rings is a beautiful rendition of it. You're basically a party of 3, and you have 2 to 3 characters, and you're going out and you're completing a story. You're trying to get to the other side. You're fighting all these things, and then there's this huge monster at the end just to get to the next storyline. So Chip actually kind of was the spearhead of our games, so he can tell you a little bit more about it, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, my first attempt at the living card game was with Netrunner, and we didn't really have a lot of success with that.
Yeah.
But then we heard about this one, and it was like the idea that it was a cooperative really appealed to us. And we also said, you know what? Instead of just trying to individually try to jump in and buy everything, as a group, let's just buy. To play with 3 players, you have to have two starter sets, so that you have enough cards for that, which is normal for the Fantasy Flight model. But then after that, we said, okay, we're going to start with our 2 starter sets. We'll make our original decks, and then we're just going to do the story in sequence. And we're only going to buy a new pack when we finish the old one. We're only going to add the new cards as they're revealed in the story. And I think it's working really cool.
Yeah.
I like that, and I just love the way the game functions as you're going through that story. You get the feel that you're sort of doing the behind the scenes stuff as the ring is making its way to Mordor. So.
Yeah,
really cool game.
We decided to play it that way, and it adds a neat little agonizing step every time we open a new chapter pack or whatever they call them for that one, because you've got your deck that you like, and now there's these new cards that you could put in it, and it's done kind of this neat agonizing deck construction thing.
Do I want to take something out to put this in?
Yeah, almost with this new hero, right? Who gets it, right? It's really cool.
Yep. Very cool. My number 2, along the same lines, is the new iteration of Lord of the Rings, the card game, and that is ARKHAM Horror card game. Mm-hmm. Now, truth be told, this guy is quickly becoming my favorite card game. I love the implementation, the way that Lord of the Rings really didn't have locations like ARKHAM does. ARKHAM, you have a card that represents a specific location, and your character is going to move in between them.
That was a little more abstract in Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
But man, I just love how they've done this. They've incorporated sort of a token draw to have a random resolution for actions, and just the way the game flows, and of course the storyline is really appealing to me. So ARKHAM Horror, the card game, would be my number 2.
Well, the storyline also adds this choose your own adventure almost element. So, not to spoil anything for anybody, but, at the end of it, you make a choice, and then that kind of opens the door to the next part of it.
And you don't really know. You're going to make that choice, and
without
somewhere
knowing
down
the
the line, you're gonna find out that decision branched you off in one way or the other. Yeah, it's cool.
On to number 1.
Okay, so now we're down to our number 1s. And for me, that game was Elysium by Space Cowboys. As you may know, I love the mythology genre, and the way that you are building your tableau, and you get to use the power of the gods as you're building up your legends. And once you decide to send them to Elysium, that's how you gain your victory points. But once you make that decision, you can't use their special powers anymore. It's like they're now in the eons of history. And it's just an amazing story for me, because you're building these sets up to get these bigger powers, but eventually you have to retire the gods down, and you lose that piece of it. And I just think it's a wonderful story that it tells.
Yeah, for me, it's in the card. It's not really drafting, but the way you acquire new cards for your tableau, because you've got your 4 colored columns, and a card may have a green and a red dot on it. So that means you have to have those in your pool to be able to take that card. And when you do, you have to expel one of your columns. So you've got to look at what's out there and say, okay, well, I'm going to need a yellow, so I got to keep that. But my opponent is probably going to look for this, So and that one phase for me is the game, placing those columns and getting your cards and denying your opponent what they need. I really enjoy that part.
There's
of it.
a lot of strategy there.
It is. Yeah.
My number 1 still remains for now to be Race for the Galaxy, and I love the way this game is put together. The iconography can be a beast to get over when you first start learning, but once you get an idea of how it works, it really is a race for the galaxy, trying to get to 15 planet cards either colonized or conquered, but there's a lot of ways to get there. So I really like it, and it's really fun with 3 or 4 players.
Yep. I definitely agree.
Yeah, like what he said, there's many different ways to win the game. You can go full on military, or you can try the technology route, the merchant route, political route. There's a tons of different ways to get to the end game, and it's saving grace for me. It's not one of my favorite card games, but it does make it interesting and complex because it has multiple ways to win. So I really enjoy it.
And my number one, we debated a lot on what makes a card game because that seemed like an easy topic when we decided to do this video. And one of the answers was cards are a key component. So that kind of got this one on the list because I felt like it was a card game, but I could see folks calling it other things. Mine's 51st State, the master set. You're acquiring cards which represent your locations, and you're running your engine with using your workers and your resources through that. But without the cards, it doesn't work. So that's why it got here. It's the finest engine building game that I've ever played. The system incorporates the different resources perfectly, and you can decide, hey, I'm going to go heavy on gang members, right? So they're going to produce a lot of guns, and you feed those guns through your factories and all of this other stuff to create more output to score victory points. So it's just essentially a race to 25 victory points. And the fact that you could accomplish all of this with cards and some little tokens just blew me away. I loved it. 51st State Master Set.
I agree with everything you just said. The fact that you can just build up, and even if if something isn't working, you can change it. You can raise it, or if something's working a little too well for him, you can raise his too. So
yeah, post-apocalyptic engine building.
Yeah.
I mean, where do I sign up? I actually tweeted Portal Games the other day, and I asked Ignacy Trevicek if we can get a Juggalo faction for 51st Tab. I think that the Insane Clown Posse needs some representation in this world, and they would fit, right? I mean,
I'm not an ICP fan.
No,
so I'm
well, I may not be
that.
either, but just theme-wise, I think when post-apocalyptic comes,
the clowns are coming.
I think the Insane Clown Posse Juggalos are going to be there. They seem like hardy people. Them and the Quakers, I think, are going to be the ones that
I don't even know what just happened.
Really survive. So,
all right,
yeah,
so,
great game.
Before this gets any more off the rails, those are our 15 favorite card games. I hope you've enjoyed it. For Roll to Hit Gaming, I'm Lucas.
I'm Joe.
And I'm Chip.
We'll see you next time.